Thank you, Mayor Bryant and Supervisor Friend. And now Steve Clark, Deputy Chief of the Santa Cruz Police Department, would like to share some of his personal memories of Butch.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I was completely honored to be asked by the Baker family to share memories of Butch. He was my friend, he was my colleague. We were just a couple of knucklehead kids that started out in this job years ago, and somehow we became the old guys in the place, you know. The family had one simple request from me: Steve, keep it light and make them laugh. That's exactly what we're going to do. Because that's exactly what Butch would have wanted. Butch had a way of taking a perfectly serious situation and somehow ruining it so that we laughed. It was just unbelievable. And no matter how bad the stress was or what we were going through, here comes Butch. And he's got something funny to say. Now, part of the problem is there's so many decent people here today that, exactly. I've got to somehow find a way to be appropriate, and you have no idea how that limited the material I have to deliver for you today. Oh my. And wow, you know, just look at everybody here. Butch would have loved this. He would have been absolutely thrilled to see the drama unfold in front of him. He would have just sat back with that little sort of Butch cross-arm sideways stance, and he would have laughed. He would have loved it. And you know, just look at all the dignitaries: Governor Brown, Attorney General Harris, and Secretary Panetta. We are so honored that you would come and you would be a part of this. In fact, Governor, has anybody ever told you, sir, that you bear a striking resemblance to me? Actually, Butch was one of the first people who pointed that out to me. He turned to me one day. He said, "Dude, you look like the governor." You know, he never said that when Schwarzenegger was in office. And for those of you that aren't from California, dude just means, hey, just so you know. But that's, you know, Governor, I guess the resemblance is so striking, sir, that last night there was a couple of people at the restaurant I ate at, and they think they took their picture with you. In fact, there's some people who bought you coffee this morning, too. I hope that's all right. Yeah. And I want you to know, I didn't leave them thinking I was really you. I told them the truth. I couldn't have people thinking I was the governor. I told them the truth. I told them who I actually am. I said, I'm really Paul Schaefer with David Letterman's band. Oh, it's good to laugh, isn't it? And that's exactly what Butch would have wanted today. He would have wanted us to laugh. He would have wanted us to celebrate his legacy. He would have wanted us to be together and remember those good times. You know, Butch was an amazing detective. He was always looking for an angle. In fact, this guy had more angles than a math professor. You know, Butch always seemed to somehow know when things were stirring in the police department. He just had this sense about him. And so as things were stirring, all of a sudden, you would see Butch just show up somewhere in a hallway. You know, it was this amazing thing. Something's stirring, things are going on. There's Butch. You know, and he had this telltale little lean that he would strike whenever he was sort of fishing for information. It looked something like this. And then you'd see him again poke his head in your door. You know. In fact, his calf got such a workout doing that we could sort of tell the state of the department based on the size of Butch's left calf as he did that. And if it was really serious, you got the mustache rub, right? Santa Cruz guys, you know that. You've seen this one. That one. So, in fact, the fact that he wore shorts allowed us to see, well, what's the mood like today? How's the chief? I don't know. Check the calf. See what it looks like. I hope I'm not going to be the first guy to cry at this podium here today. You know, Butch had a background in the car sales business, and he found a way to use that with his detective skills and his intuition. In fact, he would get people to confess to stuff that was unbelievable, and he would get suspects to talk to him in a way that none of us ever could. And in fact, it wasn't until I found myself trying to buy a used car that I realized exactly what Butch had been doing all these years. I mean, they're trying to buy a car. I felt like I was being interviewed by Butch. I said, that's what he did. It's the car sales thing. In fact, I knew that he had taken the car sales thing too far when the last suspect I transported to jail for him, as we pulled up to the jail, he asked, he says, is it too late to get the extended warranty and leather package on this confession? And did you ever try to have a semi-covert conversation with Butch? You know, occasionally in the halls of the police department, we have to talk about things that are sensitive and things that are covert. Butch would just kind of had this way that you needed a wind talker to help you understand, you know? And he would come to you, you know, and he would say something like this. He would say, you know, we got a couple of people and there's this thing and some stuff's got to happen. You going to be all right with that? What? You find, well, what did he just say? And then he'd give you the lean. He'd give you that too. And he'd repeat it again. The problem is after working with Butch for a little while, you started to really understand that stuff. And then you would respond like that. And you found you had a whole new language that you were talking with. And it was just hilarious because he was never really comfortable telling you these things as he leaned and never really told you what you needed to know, but somehow told you what you needed to know. It was weird. And he was always in that information business. You know, trying to corral the curiosity of that guy made me feel like the man in the yellow hat sometimes in a Curious George story. He was just, he was amazing, he was fun. He took that, his love of NASCAR into how he would drive the police cars on occasion. Chief, you might not want to hear this. Occasionally, you know, every now and then we get a new model of police car. You know, we started out with those old Dodge Diplomats. How many of you remember those, right? Those things that die in you. It sounded like Dino the dinosaur as you tried to start the thing up. You know? But you could always tell where Butch was in the city in the middle of the night because you could hear that engine roar. It'd be quiet 3 in the morning, and all of a sudden you'd, oh, Butch is over on the west side. Oh, there's Butch on the east side now. I hear him coming. He somehow transferred his love of NASCAR into his police work, which was just uniquely Butch, right? Butch certainly defined the word character. And here's the crazy thing about Butch, is Butch loved a practical joke, but he himself never really pulled off the practical joke. He was always that guy in the background that was telling you, you know, you ought to, hey, why don't you, you know? But he loved the practical jokes. And here's some of the stuff that I know that he participated in. Everything from helping to finance an ad for a 6 a.m. garage sale at my house, putting a coworker's house up for sale with a local realtor while they were on vacation, and then putting spinner hubcaps on the investigation lieutenant's car to pimp his ride for him. He was always waiting in anticipation to seize the moment and create a practical joke. You know, he was like the farmer that would plant the seeds and stand back and proudly watch the crop of practical jokes sprout up around him. And everybody who knew Butch knows that they've been butched at least once, don't you? Santa Cruz? Absolutely. So while Butch and I shared many laughs and many good times and many stories I'll never tell from this podium, there was a serious side to him too. So while he was fun, Butch and I had the opportunity to talk about the deeper things in life. We talked about who we wanted to be as men, who we wanted to be as leaders, and how deeply he cared for the men and women of the Santa Cruz Police Department. We talked about his faith, talked about his religion, we talked about our beliefs. You know, Butch and I shared a common experience going through the Post-Supervisor Leadership Institute, and we talked about how profound that was on our lives, the things that we learned, and again, the men we wanted to be, the leaders we wanted to be. Kelly, Adam, Jillian, and Ashley, he loved you so, and he would talk about you often. You were his Kelly Joe, and his Adam, and his Jillian, and his Ashley, and he was so proud. In fact, Adam, when it was time to make a hiring decision for you at the police department, I never saw your dad work that calf out so much doing this. He was looking in my office and just wanted to know what was going on. You know, Butch was the ultimate go-to guy. He would always be there when you need him. Like Chief Vogel talked about earlier, when the chips were down, Butch was the guy you wanted, and he would give of himself, and he would sacrifice. And I know that that gift that he gave us and that sacrifice was a sacrifice the family paid too. You gave him to the Santa Cruz community, and he did so much good. He helped so many victims of crime. He helped us that worked with him. He mentored, he taught, he trained. He was the go-to guy, no doubt about it. In spite of how hard Butch worked, here's one thing I know about him, is that Butch understood that the only thing that he would leave behind is the influence that he has on people. He could investigate the greatest case in the world or come up with the greatest policy, but all that was for naught if he didn't have an influence on those around him. Butch also knew how very special the men and women who choose public safety as a lifestyle were. He knew the sacrifices that you pay as you head out each and every day. He knew the challenges that you faced every day, and he felt those, and he wanted to be a better leader, and he wanted to help teach, train, and guide through those things. You see, there's a bond that those of us share who do this job that just can't be matched because of the sacrifice and the way that we give. And there's a bond that our families share with us as they give and they share us as well. So here we are. Here we are today. We find ourselves in a place that I never thought I would find myself in, eulogizing my friend Butch. So how do we carry on? This was a horrific tragedy, one of which I'm sure we don't even know the magnitude of yet. We've been so busy planning and preparing this memorial service. I'm sure there's many of us who worked tirelessly through this, who the full effect of this hasn't yet hit us, and we'll feel that. And for those of you that have offered your comfort and your love, we will lean on that in the weeks and the months ahead as we find a way to get through this. One of the things I shared with Butch was a book written by a friend of mine, Dave Carey. Dave was a POW in the Hanoi Hilton in the Vietnam War. And one of the things that I had the opportunity to ask Dave is, Dave, it was a terrible experience. How did you get through this? How did you and your people get through this? Much like we're experiencing a terrible thing now. And Dave said, well, we had one simple motto. And that motto was just return with honor. Wow, return with honor. What a simple concept, but yet so meaningful. So where do we go from here? Many of you have come here today to say that you wanted to honor the legacy of Butch and Elizabeth. Well, I would just challenge you that if you want to honor that you do all that you do so that you can return with honor. To anyone that hears my words today, the challenge to you is that you live your life and you do the things that you do so that you can, at the end of the day, say that you will return with honor. It doesn't matter if you're law enforcement or not. Do what you do so that you return with honor at the end of the day. And for the public safety people here, I want to speak to you for a second. Butch and Elizabeth their sacrifice demands that you do your job, you live your life, you carry out in such a way that you honor the very fine legacy that they've left, the thing that they paid the ultimate sacrifice for what you still get to do every single day. I don't care what kind of call for service you're on, case you investigate, case you bring before the court, you hear if you're a judge, you do that in such a way that at the end of the day, you say that you can return with honor. You want to honor their legacy? That's exactly how you do it. Do what you do today so that you can return with honor and honor that sacrifice. Finally, here's what I know about life. None of us are getting out of this alive, right? We'll all find ourselves someday in the place where Butch and Elizabeth find themselves. The day will come when our days are done here and we are summoned back to our Maker. So what I would ask of you with that in mind is that each of you would live your life in such a way so that when you're returned to the Father and you return to our Maker, that you can do that with honor. Because when you show up at those pearly gates, you're going to see Butch there, and he's going to be doing that lean. And he'll be so excited to tell you what he's discovered, because you know he's probably in the information business up there as well. Thank you.